Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 736. Today we're going to talk about Warcry Red Harvest. This is the latest big box expansion for Warcry. And this is a self-contained box, so if you don't have any other stuff, you can just get this. It comes with 2 different war bands, some terrain, a book with some campaign stuff and cards and dice and all the tokens that you need. So it's effectively like a new starter set. And so it comes with, like I said, 2 brand new war bands. One is the Dark Oath Savagers, and then the other one, Tarantulus Brood, and then a whole bunch of terrain. So the main thing that sets this apart from some of the other boxes is you have these delve engines, and the scenarios and the different sort of quest lines and stuff will interact with that. And this is set, of course, in the 8 points, like all the other boxes. And you can actually interact with these engines, and it's basically for mining this Varanite. So it's a little bit kind of more treasure oriented, and you can actually interact with the terrain itself a little bit more in this. So let's jump down to the table. I'll give you an overview of all the components and some of the different sort of product types of stuff, and then we'll jump back up here and I'll give you a little bit of a review. Okay, here you can see I've got a scenario set up, and this stuff is just Zenithal primed. I haven't had a chance to fully paint this stuff up yet, but I actually kind of liked how it looked. So I just played a couple games with this, and I'll get around to finishing up painting. It's now put me kind of in a backlog with my Warcry terrain. I was all caught up, but now I'm not. So you can see here, let's zoom in there. You can see a couple of these delve engines. So this is kind of like an oil derrick here, and this is going to be pulling, the Varanite out of the ground. And they kind of go through these different troughs and things like that, and they have these other troughs. Then you have this sucker over here, which is kind of like a little bell, sort of almost like a little mill there. You can see the buckets and stuff. I'll give you a better close-up of these, but I just wanted to have it kind of leave it set up there. And you've got the different models and stuff, which we'll show you. But these 2 engines here, it's called a siphon actually, the oil derrick, and then this mill, this dredger. These are the kind of the 2 things that you can interact with based on some of the different, of course, different scenarios and cards that are dealt out there. And you'll get treasure, or you can turn them off and on. You can sort of activate them. And when you activate them, then these connected troughs, these sluices here, they will become hazardous, and you'll start to take damage on there. So the board itself and the terrain itself is actually going to be sort of a hazard that players have to deal with. And depending on which side of this actual board that you play on, these little like lava pits and stuff, for example, on this side, will actually cause damage. You can see there's even like little bridges and things built right into the board there that you can walk across safely. But here you could get pushed into these and stuff like that, and just get outright killed right away there by walking into some of the stuff. So it's a little bit more interactive of kind of a terrain setup and different boards. I did want to kind of give you a close-up of some of the terrain pieces here. We'll move this out of the way. So this one was pretty easy actually to put together. I do feel like this chain here is going to snap one day because it's kind of like joined up here. So it's has a little bit of give, but not too much. But that's good that it has some give, because you could easily snap that, I think. So just want to watch out for that. But actually assembling this one was really straightforward. And 99% of the terrain was really just a piece of cake, especially these sluices and stuff like that. These other platforms are really cool. I mean, just in general, these platforms are just really neat things to have. And you have kind of modular ladders and stuff. And you can see kind of the shape and shade of it, even with just the Zenithal Prime there. So you get a couple of these bigger pieces. Now this one here, let me move this stuff. This guy here, this dredger, this kind of mill, this was a little bit tricky, but it's really cool. So let's take a look at this here. So you can see these skeletons here at the bottom kind of sort of being carried by or pushing this turning wheel here. That's pretty neat. So this is a little bit unstable, but not too bad. I should have trouble packing that away. Now this thing here with the bells, just a little tip of kind of advice here. So the way that the instructions have you build it, you kind of build it from this side going this direction if you do the steps in order. Now each of these little like buckets that almost look like bells, these are separate pieces here, and then there's these little wood sort of slats here at the bottom here, and on this you have sort of the little trough there where it jumps. You can see the buckets kind of drop in the stuff there. Now if we look at it this way, what I did, because this actually took me like overnight to do, so I built it up this way, and then you can see here, let's see if we can zoom in there, you can see where that joins and connects there. It connects to this one there, in there. It is fitted, they're like a shaped little joint, so it fits in there perfectly. But the weight of these bells here, I couldn't just like glue it in and stick it in there because the weight of the bell will make it drop down. So what I did is one piece at a time, I would glue it in on this side and then move this larger piece in here. This is one big piece. Move it in there and let it hold it so it would hold it in the right spot. So then when it dried on this side, I could just pull that out very easily, and the bell or the bucket here maintained its shape. And as you can see, there's like a little joint in there that is the same idea. Glue it on this side and then push this piece in there to hold it so the shape was correct. So then went down all of the different buckets here. And then once they were all done, and then I just glued in all of the corresponding holes on this side and just put it in, piece of cake, easy. So, because obviously if you glued these two at the top, and then if you try to glue them as you went down, you'd be like trying to, you know, wedge them and just stretch them a little bit. So doing them all like this and then waiting like a good amount of time. And then once they were all in, I just left this side, but dry, not glued on this side overnight, and then came back the next day, boom, 2 seconds, the rest of it glued up nice. So that was the only real tricky piece to actually assemble there. I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. And I just wanted to give you a close-up of the first warband. These are the Dark Oath Savagers, and I really like their Dark Oath models. They have like a Conan barbarian type of vibe here. And you get a good sense for the different sculpts here, even with the Zenithal Prime on there. Really nice. This is probably my favorite of the two warbands, just in terms of the looks there, especially like this character, because it's just a straight, you know, that's Conan. I mean, that's just a straight Conan model right there. So really cool. The swords and axes and stuff, some people are doing dual wielding. There's not really too much to say different about this. It's pretty straightforward warband. Just attack, and your abilities give you extra attacks, or just beef up the strength of your attack and stuff like that. For both warbands, it basically works out like you can take everybody sort of out of the box except for one of your guys, and you'll usually get up to like 940, 970 points, kind of depending on your choice there. So you have some kind of room to sort of play around with your build, but usually you can run all your figures except for one to get up to that 1,000 point mark. So that's the Dark Oath Ravagers. And then next here we have the Tarantulous Brood. Now, as much as I like the Dark Oath Ravagers for their look and the models, I like the Tarantulous Brood for the gameplay. Now the models are fine in this case. They are a little bit spindly. This guy was decent to put together, but this guy has, one of two guys I built with nets. So they have some special abilities that you can activate with their nets to kind of like pin, you know, the opposing warband, which is always a fun thing. Reminds me of kind of the snake a warband. I can't remember the name of them. There's a snake warband. These guys are kind of like the spider warband. So instead of little snakes, you have little spiders here that you can, if it will focus on this, there we go. And so you have little spiders. And now you can activate an ability for these spiders so they can move up and down basically at free inches. So left and right horizontally, they still, whatever their movement is, which is I think 6, yep. But if they go up, if you activate the ability, they can go up for free. So you can get them places pretty quickly. Now they're not very strong, or, you know, they don't really attack or much or anything, but you can get them to places to maybe screen off stuff, get to an objective or that kind of thing like that with these guys. Maybe block out one of the delve engines and get them places very quickly, because there's a lot of verticality you can see here with all this terrain, and even with the original base set. So this is a fun little thing here. These guys are a little bit spindly to put together, specifically these guys here with these sort of like Ninja Turtle dual wielding katana things. I don't remember which Ninja Turtle had these little things here. They're not katanas, I can't remember what they're called, but the little small spike swords, one of the Ninja Turtles had those. So those are kind of tricky. It's not terrible, but it just, there's a little bit of delicacy involved with this. It's, you know, very spindly and thin characters here. Let's see if we focus on him. Yeah, he's a good one there. So yeah, this is a good one. I think overall this one's a little bit more fun to play with, just because you have some kind of different tools and stuff. Both of them, they have like a lot of models, and this is the same one. So you can basically take everything you want except for one. So you can just pull out, you know, one of your spiders, and you could take everything. Or if you wanted to run all 3 spiders, you could pull out one of your other guys. The same idea there. So if there's a lot of models on the board for these particular warbands, a little bit more, I think, than probably most of the other warbands that are out for the game there. Anyway, that's kind of a quick rundown of those. I do want to talk about a couple of other little component things real quick. One thing is just weird is I have dice mixing from the other sets, and I noticed that these are from the new set, and they have, you know, kind of 90-degree angles on there. and the other old ones are all rounded. I prefer the rounded ones. That's not really a big deal, but I thought it was kind of strange that they switched to the square dice there. But you know, whatever. I just thought it was interesting that they did that change, because I really do like the rounded edge dice there. I don't know, it feels like a little higher quality to me than the square ones, but I have no idea which one is actually more quality. And then one other thing here, component wise, you can see here, and it's like this for all the cards. So on the right here, you can see these are some of the new victory cards for the new set. And then the older ones have this kind of thing. So not the backing, but like the core of the cards, there's a cardstock core. It's a little bit different. I expect after some use, and it might be that these old ones have been used a little bit, that the difference is that it might kind of go away. But every single card deck like this, the victory, the twist and stuff, has that kind of different core. And I hadn't noticed that in any of the other terrain boxes or the other big box expansions, that difference. They'd all been pretty consistent, but this is a different thing here. So I don't know if it's higher or lower quality, but it is a different sort of card core there. But while we're talking about this, I will say there is some interesting stuff in here in the victory conditions and the twists, and of course the terrain setups that go really well with this type of terrain. So it is a different kind of experience than just the original starter set. So there are some differences there. But let's jump up to my talking head, and we'll talk more about like the review part of it. Okay, so that's a little bit about Warcry Red Harvest, and I'll put some links to some of my previous Warcry reviews in case you're curious about that. I will say, in comparison to some of the other big boxes and things like they've done with this is probably, I think, the best one that they've put out. Maybe even better than the original starter set, although that was really cool too. A couple of things about that contents in this. So the terrain is great. I showed you the terrain. It's awesome. It looks great. I like the interactions that you can do with the terrain. The war bands are really cool. You've got kind of a more straightforward one and then a little bit more tricksy one. So if you have like, two players that want to play this, you can kind of, gauge their ability and that kind of stuff. And it gives you kind of a different vibe too, just, trading up the different war bands. And you get a lot of the models too. I think there's 20 plus models here for each of the different war bands. So it's a lot of fun there. And the other thing I wanted to mention is in the book here, it's a full-blown rule book. You've got the rules to play. It's a little bit thinner of a book than the kind of the base rule book, the one that came with the original starter, but you have the full rules in this book. You don't need to get any other rule book, which is nice if you're a starting player getting into this. And it has the conversions quests and all that kind of stuff for these guys in here. And then they did something I think was kind of neat here. I haven't had a chance to actually play through any of this, but it looks really cool having read through some of it, is this concept of branching quests. And you can use these branching quests with, the warbands in this box or any other warbands that you have, even some of the warbands that you will pull out of some of the Age of Sigmar factions. If you've got like, Stormcast or Deepkin or anything like that, you can take and play through some of these branching quests. And it's a kind of a cool little thing. It adds a little bit more, narrative and just some different ways to kind of approach the whole convergence idea there. So that's really neat. In the past year or two, I've been sort of lukewarm on some of the boxes. Like I didn't really like Pariah Nexus. The Catacombs box for Warcry was all right. But I really like their newest Blood Bowl, and I really like this. So this to me is kind of on par, because it kind of, if you think of it for like the bang for your buck kind of idea, this is right up there with that latest edition of Blood Bowl, which I think was a really good value and a really good way to get started. And I think this also is a really good way to get started. And I think it's really good for existing fans of Warcry that wanted a couple of war bands, wanted the terrain, because eventually they're going to come out with boxes of this terrain probably, and they're going to come out with boxes for each warband. And maybe they'll put out some kind of book or something that has some of these quests, but you get all of it in one box in this case. So I think you're probably going to end up saving some money there if you want like most of the stuff in here. Because I could see some people like, well, I don't really want that warband, or I just want the terrain. So it's kind of a tough sell in that case. But I think each of the different components and stuff is a good value. I would like to see, not that anybody that works there is listening to this, but some more of that, the branching quest idea. I'd like to see just a book or something that kind of sort of to tie everything together. Because I really like how the little bit of narrative that they've sort of started to draw through with the first box set and then Catacombs and then now this big box of sort of the ever evolving sort of lore and stuff like that for the 8 points and for this, sort of scene that they've started to set in the sort of Warcry part of the Age of Sigmar universe. You know, I don't know what it would be, because I don't know if you'd really want like a full-fledged like role-playing type of edition or something, or like a narrative quest book or some story or something that you could go through. I don't really know what it would be, but I think that it's kind of would be well served for that kind of thing in this, because then you have a little bit more grounding in sort of carrying over your warbands game over game. Now, that being said, that kind of goes against some of the really cool things I like about Warcry, where the in-between game stuff is very, very light, you know, but it's still there and it's still kind of meaningful, and you have this sort of constantly sort of evolving cycle of convergence quests that you can run through just to kind of spice things up without having kind of the heavy bookkeeping in between games, because there's plenty of games that do that already. You know, you can play Necromunda or Frostgrave or whatever if you want kind of that heavy bookkeeping where you maintain your headquarters and, you know, all the money in your warband. Those kind of games exist, so it's nice to have a game like this where it's not really about that so much. It's very like quick, you know, get in the game and play quick games, and then you have some kind of maintenance, but not too much. But I'd be interested to see them sort of explore that a little bit. I don't think it's really necessary. But anyway, yeah, if you haven't played Warcry, this is 100% recommend. Good way to get started. I don't think you can get the original starter anymore. This is a great way to get in. I would say this is probably better than that starter, but there's only information for the 2 warbands in here, whereas the original starter you had, you know, more stuff in there for that. But you know, the only thing you really need beyond this, if you were to pick up more warbands, would just be like another little book or supplement to go with that warband. But again, they have some generic the branching quests, in this that are as applicable to anybody. So you don't really need too much more. If you're like, I want to buy this, and you're like, oh, maybe I'll get like 1 or 2 extra warbands, you'd still be good to go, because you can still do some of the quests in here, and you've got the terrain and stuff like that. And then at that point, it's just, you know, how much do you enjoy the game, and if you want to get anything else after that. So I think this is a good, solid release here. So definitely take a look at it. Warcry Red Harvest. Thanks.